Dear organizers and participants of the conference, I am glad to welcome you and offer to your attention the presentation of the research named Development of a Scientific and Methodological Approach for Assessing Losses from Warfare in Natural Ecosystems in the Territory of Ukraine. In the field of military ecology, a significant unresolved problem is the development of appropriate methods for assessing the damage caused by hostilities in natural ecosystems. Our research proposes an integrated approach to predict the potential impact of hostilities by considering environmental information, military-technogenic load indicators, trophic networks, and biodiversity composition. The research presents a block diagram for assessing the state of ecosystems in war zones and proposes a classification of military-technogenic disturbance levels based on the state of edifying synergia. Currently, an undeclared war is ongoing in Ukraine by the Russian Federation, affecting the Polesha and Slobodansky regions, as well as the southeastern industrial regions. The pollution and potential environmental damage in these areas are directly related to the military-technogenic load resulting from the use of weapons and military equipment. This includes both natural ecosystems and industrial urban regions. Qualitative and evaluative methods are used in the practice of forecasting and precision military ecology to assess the impact of hostilities on natural ecosystems. However, there are challenges in determining the relative importance of military and technogenic factors and estimating the quantitative parameters of the natural ecosystem. Further research is needed to identify the key factors influencing the military-technogenic load in natural ecosystems. This slide presents a diagram of component factors for assessing the military-technogenic load on the natural environment. These factors include the specifics of hostilities, the origin and features of hostility damage, the spatial scale of hostilities, and the period of influence of hostilities. The Emerald Network, a significant part of which is located in Ukraine, encompasses 5.8 million hectares, 9% of Ukraine's land area. However, a significant portion of these territories already had protective status, and some areas, such as the Dnieper Cascade reservoirs, serve as migratory paths for birds. The hostilities pose a threat to these territories, risking their destruction or significant military-technogenic impact. Approximately 2.9 million hectares of nature conservation territories within the Emerald Network are under threat of destruction. To assess the military-technogenic load from hostilities, the concept of a military natural-technogenic geosystem is proposed. This involves differentiating the reaction of ecosystems to military-technogenic load, considering technogenic changes in environmental factors, and conducting an integrated assessment based on quantitative data. This scheme illustrates the hierarchical structure of a complex military natural-technogenic geosystem and its interaction with the environment, based on two main approaches, the biological-ecological approach and the ecological-geographical approach. The biological-ecological approach organizes the hierarchical series as follows: place of residence and community, ecosystem, biome. When examining each block or element of the natural environment in the military natural-technogenic geosystem, we find that they have an internal balance and exist in a quasi-stationary state. However, at the limits of environmental homogeneity, there are exchangeable mass transfer flows that military origin ingredients and military-technogenic energy fields can activate. The boundaries of the military natural-technogenic geosystem are conditional, blurred, and determined by the level of the natural or altered geochemical background. Explanation of the designations used in the scheme you can see in the table on the next slide named the classification of levels of military-technogenic disturbance of natural ecosystems. Classification is based on the state of edifying synergia, which provides an estimate of the ecosystem's ability to self-renew. In the case of military-technogenic influence, Class I and II, an effective and permanent control of the population density of edifying species is necessary. In the reclamation of these territories, especially in Class III, the restoration of the edifying synergia that formed the basis of the ecosystem before the beginning of hostilities should be the primary focus. Based on the main principles of biosynology theory, a working hypothesis suggests that the preservation of the viability of the edifying sinuses of phytocynosis is a necessary and sufficient condition for the self-regeneration of the biota in the operational zones of hostilities. Several studies have shown that the degradation of ecosystems is almost irreversible when the population density of the edifying group of species, in forest ecosystems, these are the main forest-forming species, decreases by 2 or more times. However, it is important to note that the ecosystem productivity indicator, which characterizes the degree of military-technogenic damage to the natural environment, is ambiguous in its response to technogenic factors. Since the existence and functioning of ecosystems rely on a limited number of species, mainly plants, the military-technogenic effect on these key species causes disruptions and changes in other components of ecosystems. Therefore, a quantitative change in the population density of autochthonous species edifiers could serve as an indicator of the degree of military-technogenic damage to the ecosystem, and the timeframe of the action could indicate its speed. To develop a comprehensive model for ecosystem assessment in the zone of hostilities, we will examine the balance equations of terrestrial ecosystems associated with military facilities. These equations are based on the principles of mass and energy conservation and describe the exchange of mass and energy among the key biotic components of the ecosystem, producers, substrates, and consumers. The slide presents the equations of the model and its components. Biomass refers to the amount of functioning living matter, measured in mass units and related to a unit of area or volume, essentially indicating the average density of biomass. Biomass producers are autotrophic organisms, primarily green plants, capable of creating organic matter from simple inorganic compounds. Substrates with biomass represent the nutrients on which microorganisms thrive. Biomass consumers are heterotrophic organisms, including animals, macroconsumers, as well as bacteria and fungi, microconsumers. They consume pre-existing organic substances without decomposing them into simple mineral components. Consumers are categorized into different orders. Consumers of the first order are consumed by plants, while consumers of the second, third, and subsequent orders are predators. The model of the military facilities ecosystem is described by generalized aggregated coordinates P, Q, and S. To account for the significant impact of military measures and the rehabilitative effects of environmental protection measures, additional functions W and U are introduced into the balance equations used in mathematical ecology to describe ecosystem functioning. Currently, there is insufficient experimental data to construct a full-scale model of the military object ecosystem in the presented form, equations 1, 2, 3. Such a model would be highly complex, so it is recommended to break down the ecosystem of the military facility into subsystems consisting of equally potentially hazardous objects within the biogeosynosis. These subsystems can be aggregated using appropriate generalizing indicators, indices, to describe the state of producers, consumers, and substrates. In this manner, the entire terrestrial ecosystem of the military facility is divided into subsystems, and each subsystem has its own aggregated simulation mathematical model. The slide provides a brief description of the consequences of hostilities on the ecosystems and natural environment of Ukraine, which can be categorized into two groups, direct and indirect effects. The determination of a biologically justified permissible threshold value for technogenic changes in the phytosynosis edificator sinus of an ecosystem is crucial for guiding development paths and selecting database management strategies in the face of inevitable military and technological intrusion into the natural equilibrium ecosystem. Developed mathematical model accurately reflects the impact of military operations on the biosynoses of educational facilities. Can be utilized as a mathematical model for phenomena whose parameters can be identified, calibrated, using identification algorithms and sufficient experimental data. After identification, calibration can be incorporated into algorithms for the comprehensive assessment and prediction of the state of terrestrial ecosystems affected by military operations. By employing accepted biological methods and conducting regular observations using remote sensing satellites or UAVs, which monitor changes in the primary productivity indicator over time and space, it is possible to determine the dimensions of military-technogenic impact zones as well as the dynamics and pace of this process. Thank you for your attention. For comments and recommendations, please contact us.